few hours ago, double checking, and I confirmed with her yes, and sent her the link directly. So
Great. That's lovely.
how was your afternoon?
Really good. Yeah, my husband and I went swimming. I didn't share this with all of you, but I can feel
Mhm.
for Angel's husband with foot
Mhm.
issues because I've got foot issues the last few weeks.
Oh,
Um,
I'm
I've got a
sorry.
raw nerve under both of my
Mhm.
feet. For a few days, I couldn't walk at all, so it's
Yeah.
challenging. But then I
Mhm.
got to swim and just burn off all
Mm.
tension, and it feels so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
happening too.
I just stuck my feet in the warm water and read my books.
Yeah, that's nice. So what are you reading these days?
Well, I have been checking out a series because my husband and I do a lot of tabletop gaming.
Oh, yeah, of
And
course you do,
so,
because you're a homeschool family.
yeah,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of ways it can teach children also.
yeah.
But yeah, it sounds really strange. There's a book series about a battle mage farmer.
Huh.
And basically it's like a literary RPG. And so it's about a guy who wakes up in a world and he was already a big hero and he decides to become a farmer after a life of fighting. So
Wild. And so fiction based on history,
yes.
or
Hmm.
is it historical at all? Or just made up?
It's made up mostly. It's like in a different world.
Yeah, cool.
Hi.
Hey, nice to see you too. And
Mhm.
then coming in live from, hi, Mary. She's like an hour. Are you guys an hour away or 2 hours?
A little more than that, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Very nice. Hey, Mary. Nice to see you. I can't hear you.
Still on mute. Hmm.
Yeah, still can't hear.
You're on mute. You got to take it off mute.
Can
Yeah, it
try.
always joins without audio.
Okay,
Yeah.
how's that?
Very
There you
good.
are.
Nice to see you. I'll make sure you've got the other recording as well, because I did record earlier
Oh,
today.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that'd be great.
yeah. So lovely to see all of you. I would love to be able to have you here. I don't know if you know this, but once upon a time before the pandemic, I had a bed and breakfast every summer here. And I just have kind of like a homestead bed and breakfast, and it is very cozy and very inviting. And one day I
Mhm.
would love to have a retreat here. So if you ever want to come to Canada, let me know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Our problem is that we have a large guardian dog and she does not welcome people. She scares the bejeebers out of people.
I understand that. I have large dogs, and just their alert voice is very intimidating.
Ours is a working large guardian dog. And so when she was little, she would run to the neighbors to let them know they should leave their houses now. So, great way to make friends. Luckily, we have
Nice. Yeah.
very kind neighbors so far. So we've had some really interesting conversations, Mary. We've discussed nurturing the nurturers, incorporating self-care strategies, and we've gone into some great depths. And also this morning, reimagining our homeschool. So looking at all the, looking at our education, our home education in a way that's not what you would classically hear people discuss. And
Hmm.
tonight, I would love to chat. And with each one of you, I've had a chat. For me, the most challenging aspect of homeschooling, and right towards the end of this morning, we had a conversation that went in this direction. And it was about what the most difficult part of homeschooling is. I don't know if you've had this moment in a grocery store where someone finds out that you're homeschooling and then they're like, wow, that's amazing. And then they're like practically bowing, going, I couldn't do that. And I have actually had someone bow. I was like, please don't do that. But it turns out their reaction to it when they say I couldn't do that, I'm like, yeah, some days neither could I. And so I knew that what they were saying, they were tapping into something that was true, because there is an element of homeschooling that is so filled with freedoms. And then there's an element of homeschooling that can be super challenging and really hard. Homeschooling being hard is very much in the eye of the beholder. Everyone might answer why it's difficult for different reasons. But as we've established in the last couple of sessions, it's not academics that are the most difficult thing. You can always farm out the really hard stuff if you have to, or the sort of hard stuff like grade 8, grade 9 math, or socialization. That concept is also not the hard thing. In fact, it's not a discussion really. It's a moot concept. The kids are socialized. We're good. But what can be really difficult is actually the mothering or the parenting role, the internal challenges that it reveals to learn and grow. And I'm not talking about the child, I'm talking about the parent, maybe the child too, but most definitely us. Because if we can pick up a mirror at moments when we're frustrated with our kids or feeling overwhelmed or uncertain about why we're doing what we're doing, or confused or struggling or whatever it is, you're looking at the most difficult part of homeschooling. And it will be with us whether we're homeschooling or not. It's a rite of passage as a parent to recognize that our kids are our mini mirrors. Someone once said to me, a therapist once said to me, that you can, I don't remember why she said it, but I remember thinking it was hard for me to believe what she said was true. And now I've come to understand what she meant. That you can divorce your husband, you can leave your partner, but you can't divorce or leave your child. It's a different kind of love. Although maybe some days you think that might be an idea, it's not an option, and we all know it, and nobody's encouraging us. Nobody would ever be okay or would declare that it was okay to do that. There is a bond between your heart and your child's heart. You want to do right by them. You want to give them the best that you can. You want to love them in a way that you wanted to be loved too, or be loved, or love them in a way that you also have been loved by your parents. You want to give them everything. You might be able to leave a partner, but you could never leave a child. And in no means am I suggesting that it would be easy or ideal for you to leave a partner. But there is something so unique about the love that we have for our kids. And somehow that relationship, that really almost instinctive, unconditional, loving kind of relationship that we've been placed in these children's lives to be or to engage in, means that we want so badly to do right by them. And all of those feelings and all of that experience makes that relationship sometimes really difficult. So again, we say again?
It's people talking outside.
Oh, okay. All right. So because our kids act as mini mirrors into our souls, we tend to see things inside of us that we're not expecting to see. And I would say that that is the most difficult part of the homeschool journey. Not the socialization, not the academics. But it calls us to the thing that we would be called to, whether we were homeschooling or whether we weren't. It calls us to growth, personal growth. And when we choose to agree to that personal growth, then we are choosing to go on a journey that is going to benefit both ourselves and our children and our partners and everyone in our community. It'll bolster everyone. I would love to hear what your thoughts are or what your experience of this is. I have, so you know, in the retreat course online, I've shared about a variety of emotions that I routinely hear about, um, or experiences like overwhelm, very common, doubt, obviously. Should I even be doing this thing? Certainly, many people around you don't think so. Or, anxiety or frustration, impatience, definitely impatience. And then after a while, possibly failure or certainly perfectionism, because that's something very tied to, am I doing this good enough? I discuss all those things in the retreat that you can find online, which your email is attached to. All you do is use the password retreat and you have access to that retreat. But I'm curious what you would say your experience is of this discussion about homeschooling being hard. And you can disagree with me or you can add your own two thoughts too.
I agree. I think, um, yeah, it's funny, all the thing. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I think, yeah, it's all those stereotypical things that people think is hard about homeschooling, I found are not necessarily, especially like the socialization or, um, yeah, even like finding, I just like time, not necessarily to learn, but just, like lesson time. Because you look at your day and you're like, okay, I have X amount of hours. This should be easy to get all of this done. And in some ways, so it is easy to plan out, okay, I'm going to do this subject. We're going to get this in. But I think what you're saying is exactly right. Like the hardest thing is the parenting, because if I block out every hour of the day to get those lessons done, which seems completely doable, there's always going to be a teaching moment within each one of those segments of the day. And that leads to that parenting piece, I think, that you're talking about. Um, and I think it is definitely the hardest part, because we're called to, we're basically parenting 24/7. Like we're funneling
Yep.
everything that we're doing, all the lessons and even the socialization and being with other moms, that all gets funneled into, parenting. So I think, yeah, that you're right. And I agree with you. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's certainly my most challenging thing. And literally everything
Hmm.
that I speak to is stuff that I've had an experience with. I've
Right.
shared that with the other ladies as well. But it's
Hmm.
also reinforced by all the conversations that I have with other moms. Um, the experience you all have with the S question, socialization, when people ask you that, you're like, oh, okay, really? Are we talking about this again? And that's kind of my experience of around doubt, like the concept of doubt. I'm like, except when I'm in a scenario like now, where I'm, of course, going to engage that because that's what our intention is here. But when randomly people talk about it, I'm like, we're good. We'll be fine. But the only reason I can get from that, the place to will be fine is because I've gone through all the iterations of why this is not going to work, how this is not going to serve my family, having to address what everybody else around me thinks, the myriads of things, whether they're random strangers or family
Hmm.
or people in the media. I mean, I know that some of you are newer to homeschooling post pandemic, but in the pandemic, when people were talking about it, it was pretty wild watching the experiences of other people, how they perceived the pandemic. Although it was amusing watching the actors and actresses and everyone under the sun sampling it. Very funny.
Yeah.
But what I'd love to do, if you have a journal and a pen, is to write down the top three greatest challenges that you know you have. I'm going to be bringing to you three discussion points today. So write down the three things that you know you have as the greatest challenges in your homeschool, whether it's a big emotional challenge or something else. And then we're going to switch gears. And rather than focusing on the hard stuff, because there ain't nothing fun about focusing on the hard stuff, especially when our goal is to retreat from the hard stuff, it is to let's focus on the freedoms, focus on the things that are good. If you ever are connecting with me in email, or you've received something for free on my website, the first letter that you'll usually see from me is a list of all the benefits of homeschooling and the ones that I can recall. But I'm curious, what are some of the things, the reasons why you see homeschool has all the freedoms?
Can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah. What freedoms do you see in homeschooling? I remember hearing this morning the discussion about it's really easy to homeschool, or it's easier to homeschool than go to school because you don't have to get up in the morning. You don't have to force your day into a routine at 7 or 8 in the morning. Those kinds of things.
Well, for me, especially since I have kids with needs due to dyslexia, dysgraphia,
Yeah.
I had the flexibility to play upon their strengths
Yeah.
and to tap into where they have their needs, utilizing their strengths in a way that is, much more into the individual. But going again into the time type thing, my 5-year-old does best in the evening. So I'll sit down in school with her after she's eaten a good meal,
Yeah.
and she'll do her school and then she'll have her bedtime routine.
Yeah. Exactly. You can make it work when you want to make it work.
Yeah.
I know for me, one
That's
of my
great.
biggest ones was being able to share all the read alouds, like the stories that we shared together. It felt like we were going to different places or meeting new people, and all on our sofa. And it was one of the most fun things that we've done.
Yeah, that's a good one. I love all the time to play because we'll have our slow mornings, and then people are kind of doing their own thing and we're all kind of getting ready. Um, but I really like the time to play because they'll get in a good rhythm where they're all playing together, especially the times when all four of them are playing. Like the older
Yeah.
three the other day taught Jesse how to play hot potato. And then they were teaching him, like, when he got out, that he had to sit out and sit on the couch. And there was just so much time for them to do that rather than like, oh, we've got to be somewhere else. We've got to be at school or whatever. So just I love that we have that freedom to, like, when they're all actually playing together and
Yeah,
enjoying
it's
each
all
other,
going
that we
good.
can like right, that we can expound upon that and not have
Yeah.
to like squelch it, because we have to be somewhere. So I really enjoy
Yeah.
that.
Yep. And to this day, I see that all those relationships actually become so much more cemented, and also like really rich with memories. All the kids, I've got four kids too. It honestly feels like yesterday that I was at all of your stages, and it's not anymore. There was a time where my oldest daughter, who is now 22, would still be calling my son at the time, who was about 10 or something, 12, and they would be talking about ancient history. And my son knew some things that my daughter in university did not know, and they'd be looking back and forth, and like watching that kind of relationship is really beautiful. It's cemented rather than everybody going off into their own little world and creating their
Hmm.
own little mini worlds.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Certainly, I see the individualization, like the ability to really craft home education for each of the kids to really, become more them so they can go do their own thing when they grow up. And now I'm actually seeing them do their own thing when they're growing up. And it's pretty cool
Hmm.
to watch that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah.
Well, I've got oodles and oodles of reasons why I see homeschooling has all the freedoms. And I genuinely feel like when I'm seeing it out in the world, we live very different lives from the common, or from the masses, I should say. Our experience is very different. We don't assume that extracurriculars are in the evening. We can do that during the day. And we could do extracurriculars in the evening, but we could not. And then we could also make the evenings a time to actually eat dinner quietly and have, sort of normal flowing bedtime routines, or having some real predictability all the way throughout the day, or having way more just quiet time with each other, and sometimes solitude moments where we're not actually together, where might be one child on one bed and mom at the sofa, and we're all just having a communal quiet time, but we're all having a lot more quiet. There's just kind of a quality to our homeschool life. I think that is just so much more, because I've lived both, by the way. I have done both. It just has so much more of it's very family. It's very family.
Mhm.
Having said that, it's also very family. And so when you're wanting to breathe and you need to have a break, it can be a challenge because we're not
Right.
kids.
Right.
It's
Then
like break,
this
what's
kind
that?
of, say again.
I said it's like break, what's that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really think those kinds of freedoms, though, like even though we're given it as an option to create a family life in whatever way we want, we don't always do it. We do things to complicate it, like we've spoken to in the last couple of times together, that like my experience is pretty common. We take the school and we bring it home and we say, now we're going to have a school at home. And that is a surefire way to go down the path of frustration or burnout at some point. Or, there's so many possible ways. We discover that we do indeed have some internal work to do, and that is everyone in some form. We all sign up for that work. We all have that growth work to deal with in our homeschool, but we have to come up with a plan to address that instead of just going through the days, hoping that everything will be okay and everybody will get along and there'll just be peace and harmony. It won't always happen. Some days it will, and you should sit back and just watch that and soak it in and enjoy it. And then the other days, we have to come up with a plan to address it. We have to get really comfortable sometimes recognizing that we are like at the helm of a ship, a spaceship. Can I say that? No, because I know I'm not going to be able to continue with that. I will not give the right details to that, so I'll just stop. But we are at the helm of a ship, and everybody else is on the ship. And sometimes the sea is not smooth. But as Roosevelt said, actually, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. And so to be a really skilled sailor, we're going to experience sometimes not so smooth seas. And sometimes that is our kids having conflict with each other. Sometimes that's us with our partners having conflict with each other and then trying to homeschool. Or sometimes that's other things entirely outside of our direct family environment. And sometimes it is ourselves, that we have wildly unrealistic expectations of ourselves. And it is confusing to know, is it fair for me to think that this is something that I should be doing, or should I let this thing go? Is it letting go something that I should be giving to my kids? Or, unrealistic expectations sometimes. Sometimes we don't know how to deal with our frustration and it comes out in a big burst. Sometimes we're so afraid of what other people think. And even if we don't say it out loud, but we're constantly doubting ourselves or wondering if what we're thinking is, or what we're doing is really right by our kids, because it seems like other people don't think so. So today I am going to engage, I think, 3 of those uncomfortable feelings. I have many, and if you want to share at any point, I know you know this, Ray and Angel, but so Mary, I welcome you to share your thoughts at any different point. Does the concept of doubt, that idea of, is this the right thing for my family, something that you have a challenge with? I can go into a discussion of this or not if you have no doubt and you're certain that what you're doing is the right choice for your family. That's for everybody I'm directing to.
I mean, for me,
I think I was
because
feeling some doubts. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Oh no,
I
you
was
go
just
ahead,
saying,
Ray.
I had a kid in school and I pulled her out. So, and I've, her being almost 13 now, I've had that doubt in the past, but now I'm pretty certain.
So tell me what you think your transition was to certainty, from doubt to certainty.
Well, for me, I'm a contract therapist, and so I did therapy in the schools with kids that are in complete lockdown. So that means that they're a threat of harm to themselves or others. So these are like the really behavioral kids.
Yeah.
But I saw how the schools address things for them and for the other things, and I was like, no, hard pass.
Mhm. So you didn't feel like it was effective.
Not at all. Even the behavioral program that they had there, I didn't feel like was effective.
Yeah.
Um, they expected the kids um while they were in the behavioral program, like in order to be passed up to the next grade, they had to do a backlog of work
Mhm.
instead of just meeting the kid where they are and having them achieve these educational milestones. They had to do this backlog of work, and it brought me back to when my kid was 5 in kindergarten and had homework after kindergarten, and she would fall asleep in her dinner, and
Yeah.
or like and I really mourn her childhood, her early childhood, because I remember between work and her being in school, I saw her for a solid 3 hours a day,
Yeah.
you know? And so I feel like, her and I are just now discovering each other, whereas I've gotten to know my other two from the beginning. So
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I identify with that completely.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because I've had so many conversations with people, I really explored for myself too what the reasons are that I went from doubt to certainty, because I am actually legitimately certain. I'm not just saying it. And also, I don't hear when people are uncertain of me anymore. Whereas in the beginning, when people would kind of hedge or kind of have a pause when I'd share I was homeschooling, I was like, oh, I know what they're thinking. Oh, I should have defend that. And here's my 3-point essay. And now I'm just like, yeah, we homeschool. Cool. Hey, like, no big deal. Because I legitimately see what you've seen, actually, Ray, that you watch your child long enough, or you see your kids in a certain room or classroom and then realize they're not having their needs met anyways. And it's not that we always know exactly what we're supposed to do in some scenario, but you can guarantee we're going to find out, or we're going to search it out, or we're going to ask ourselves, what do we need to do so that we can facilitate it in some way? And even though it happens clunkily at times too, it happens, whereas it doesn't always have, there aren't the available resources in a school. But it's interesting to hear you share how your transition is. That, and a lot of time when you're spending so much time with your kids, you just see it's working. They're learning. And I'm so glad to spend this time with them. So thank you for sharing that. I think, Mary, you were going to share your thoughts as well.
Yeah, well, I've only been homeschooling Caroline for 2 years. And I think my doubt and uncertainty has been because she was in school before. And it wasn't necessarily bad. It just never felt right
Mm.
for her. Like she always struggled going and would get really nervous. And then COVID happened. But I think for a long time I kind of had doubt because COVID happened, it kind of took away like maybe what her kindergarten year could have looked like. And so because I didn't know what would have ended up happening, I think I had doubt like, oh well, maybe it could have been great. Like she would have loved it. And then we went to first grade though, and she did like it and she did meet friends. But again, it just didn't really feel right. But I think a lot of my doubt comes from her knowing what it's like to be in school and wondering if she misses that setting. Um, and then also my preschoolers for Luke and Liv, because they're going to be in kindergarten next year. And I've decided to homeschool them as well. So they know what it's like to be in preschool, although they only go 3 hours a day. And it's basically their preschool is like a Montessori. So it's basically like 3 hours of playtime, which is great. But I think if they went to kindergarten, it would be a much different experience. It's full day and whatnot. And they don't know that it would be like that. So
What would
anyway,
you,
that's kind of
you're actually very you're clarified in what it is that you're uncertain about. What I heard you say is that her experience of well, she didn't have an experience in kindergarten. She had a good experience in grade 1, but there was a feeling of it wasn't enough, or it was okay, or
right.
like that. And then what you're thinking about for your twins is that they have the possibility of doing something that you see as this could be so much more cool, the kindergarten thing, but they don't really know what that's like anyway.
Right. They don't even know. Right. So
They
they
don't
don't
really
really
know.
know any better. Right.
But it's
So
really
that's
lovely that you have that clarity.
I'm gonna try to ride that wave. I'm like, well, they don't know what it would have been like. So
So what, I'm curious what you think it would be like. What is it you think they're missing?
well, exactly. Well, and see, that's what's funny, and I think that's where I get more and more clarity um and just certainty that this is the right path. Because with Caroline, I didn't know any different because I had always gone to public school, and so with her, I'm like, oh, kindergarten's great. You know, glue and scissors and performances and other friends and recess, like all that is wonderful. And so I was like, of course she's got to go to kindergarten. It's so fun. But then the more that we've homeschooled and then with other people we've met and as we've met a homeschool community, I realized, you know, like those things are great, but they're not the end all be all.
You know, between you and me, I just want you to everybody
Um,
to hear
and so I
this.
think,
Oh, sorry. I think there was a pause there. Maybe you didn't catch me on Wi-Fi and I didn't hear you. Just so you know, for
and
me,
I don't think so.
or you can hear me, right?
Yeah,
There might be a delay.
yeah,
Um, so, you know, between you and me,
yeah,
I've
I gotcha.
that there is no one right way to educate your kids. And you would think that I would be 1000% homeschool advocate. I am, unless it's not working for the family for some reason. Now, I think we can probably work through a lot of challenges, but at the end of the day, homeschooling means nothing to me. It's, does it work for you? Is it working for your child? And your goal is for your child, not to show up for homeschool or for a kindergarten. But you know, I just want you to hear, or all of you to hear that it actually is, for me, neither here nor there, but I do think there are a lot of freedoms to homeschooling. I think I might have missed some things that you said because I think there was a delay in Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you want to repeat
Oh,
what you're saying?
well, yeah, so I think you would ask, just how I had come to that clarity. Is that what you had asked?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I think just over time, like originally thinking that kindergarten was just, of
Right.
course, so necessary because it's so fun and
Yeah.
bright and colorful and so great. But then kind of coming to that realization after COVID and after homeschooling Caroline for part of kindergarten and first grade and realizing, well, this is even better at home. Like we really are enjoying our time together and we're meeting people. Um, so yeah, so that has kind of taken away a little bit of that fear that, oh, they're just going to want to go to the next step. But
Yeah.
what I'm realizing though is if I'm not confident in it, then they're not going to be confident in it.
Right.
So that's a big thing for me to realize because I am so slow to make decisions, and can lack confidence even after I've made a decision. And so
Right.
I think I'm finally to the point where I feel very clearly to commit their early education years to homeschooling. And so it's a matter for me to maintain that
Yeah.
confidence and then relaying it to them. And I think that they might, like every now and then be like, when are we going to school? Or
Yeah.
mention something, but that's okay. And that's to be
Yeah.
expected. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah, trying to learn, is this really something that they want, or is it something that other people are talking about? And
Right.
they would also like to try, pecan ice cream or something.
Right.
Not, I don't think anybody wants to try pecan ice cream, but anyway, I mean, do they want that, or are they just hearing other people talk about it?
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Or, same thing with us asking, what is the reason for our doubt? Are we, and you've got a lot of clarity on that. You're like, well, I think maybe part of the reason I'm doubting is because I'm not sure if my children will have missed out on something. And it's so true. It's very much like the way I see life, anyways, is very much like what are those novels where you can choose your next adventure? And I do believe that some things, now this could become a theology discussion, it's not my intention, but in some ways, some of the things are fixed and some of the things we're able to make a choice. And it's true, we make these choices for our kids and we make choices for our family and they have repercussion. And also, I think we can always, we're always being called to growth. So then, really, if we're being honest or authentic about what we're doing, I think our choices are always going to bear out in a good way because you're
Hmm.
listening to your children. You're
Hmm.
actually listening to them and noticing who are they really and what do they really need. I think
Hmm.
that's a big element of it. But the self-awareness, you're very clear on what it is that you're uncertain about.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think being in the military, like for me, all this is uncharted territory. My family, I didn't grow up in the military, so I didn't grow up moving so frequently.
Yeah,
Same schools, easy path as far as education went.
yeah,
Um, so in some ways, like I'm new at all of it as well. So I think it's a matter too of, and that's where that parenting piece comes in, is saying, okay, like I'm very vulnerable with you guys, and this
yeah.
homeschooling
Thank you.
journey has really humbled me. And so
Yeah,
I'm having to be vulnerable with my kids, and it, and that's hard, but
yeah,
it's, I think, part of the big calling of it too.
yeah. And it's a beautiful thing. I just want to affirm you in that. That's one of the most profound lessons I've had in my life is that authenticity and vulnerability will always make me more connected to people around me and also more connected within myself or, all the way up so that
Hmm.
I have a greater sense of what's the right next thing to do. And when
Hmm.
we tell ourselves there's certain ways we need to show up, or I'm not sure if I can say what I really think, or I shouldn't say what I think because it
Oh,
might
hold on
not
just a
be
second.
right.
Hmm. Hi. Oh wait, I'm trying to mute. Oh wait, hold on. Sorry, guys. Oh, there. Yeah. Can you want to say hi? Yeah. Hi.
Hi,
Okay.
Jesse.
Yeah,
So
you
cute.
gotta go back. You gonna go back and hang out with.
So cute.
Very cute. Y'all have some serious cute factor going on. Almost makes me want to do
Yeah.
it again. Nope, not so much.
You just graduated from all that. What are you talking about?
I know. I haven't totally. I still have two teenagers at home, by the way. And I would love to talk about teenagers someday, so stick around because girlfriend, that is a ride. So sometimes I hear people saying it's so much fun. I'm like, shush. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is not. What I've noticed is that doubt really arises in all sorts of forms. And it could be anything from, I don't know that I can teach my child to read, or I definitely don't have strong enough math skills, which was definitely my experience. Or maybe my kiddo is introverted and they actually need to be in a classroom because they wouldn't even, connect with anybody if I wasn't pushing them. Or I don't feel organized on the best of days. How do I plan this? Or should I trust the homeschool philosophy that everybody seems to be clamping on to? Or, the local public schools bringing a cool program and I couldn't possibly afford that. Or I couldn't, bring my child to that field trip. Or there's so many possibilities. Of course, the one we spoke to earlier, I see gaps in my child's education, and it typically is the youngest child, where you're like, oh crap, they can't read. I forgot. Kidding, actually. I hear this all the time where the last child actually gets the best education, by the way, but just not because you sat them down. Just so you
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. It's called osmosis and having older siblings.
Yes, because my 3-year-old
Right.
is, everybody's like, oh my gosh, how old is she? I'm like, well, she just turned 3. They're like, oh my gosh, I thought she was older than that. And I'm like, yeah, thanks to her brothers.
I mean,
Exactly.
I've told her as a therapist, I have to tell you that the percentage structure is far beyond what is typical.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't take credit for it.
That's amazing. Yeah, that is exactly what I mean. Their education and our educations are the off the charts. I mean, if I didn't get to chat with you earlier, Mary, about this, but if we would look at our own education for the first 12 years, the common education, the average education for everybody, we would all discover we have these huge gaps, and you know it because when you start homeschooling, you're like, okay, wait, what was the properties of water? Oh, right, it's wet. Or whatever. Probably that one we've got. But there's various things, properties of light or properties of gravity or all these things that you're like, right, right, right. Oh, okay, that's cool. Like double digit subtraction. That one I figured out that I didn't know until I taught my first daughter. And that is true. And I went through nursing school and I needed to know calculating because I was calculating pediatric dosages. Thank goodness I had a calculator. But I didn't actually know that stuff until I learned myself as a homeschooler. So it turns out we all have gaps.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Math is definitely my gap. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Steve Demi, highly recommended. Matthew C. Or highly recommended because it worked for me and my oldest daughter. My other 3 kids didn't need any of that.
Oh, really?
see, math
Yeah.
is my
I've
love,
heard good
and
things.
everybody also does it. No.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll just all send your kids to the homeschool co-op for
I
your.
know we need to send them. We'll send our kids to you, Ray. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my love.
Great.
Matrices and all that kind of stuff. I was like, it's like math Sudoku. My kids are like, oh, mom.
Right.
You'll be consulted, I'm sure, after this. I think I haven't said this before, but I actually believe that all of our emotions are part of just our human experience, even anger, all of the uncomfortable ones. It's all part of being a human. And it took me many years to come to that acceptance that these human experiences like doubt, that's just being human. We could choose other choices and we would also be uncertain about them because that's called being a parent. We have this responsibility to this human being and we want to do everything right by them. And no one does, I regret to say, but really no one does. What we can do is be aware very clearly what our doubts are, be able to clarify them, write them down, be able to speak them out loud, and then address them. Then actually do something like do a little research or find some answers, own your choices. Because if you say, I want black, it means you're not getting white. Or that doesn't really make sense. If I choose one crayon, is what I'm thinking, then that means I'm not choosing another crayon. Or if I'm choosing this homeschool philosophy, it means you'll end up eclectic no matter what. Just side thought. But if you choose this thing and this extracurricular, you can't afford to do them all. Or you choose apples, that means you're not choosing, okay, this is going to break down fast here. You can unless inflation
Yeah.
keeps you buying. Yeah. But your choices are always specific and you aren't able to do everything. And that's the parenting experience. There's no such thing as parenting perfection. No matter what choices we make, there could always be another choice. But like we spoke earlier about Maya Angelou's quote, when you know to do better, then do better. You do what you can with what you know in the moment. Then you do your research, you address that doubt head on, and then when you know to do better, you do better. So I'm curious what your homeschool experience would be like if you could delete that experience of doubt. how would you show up in your homeschool, or what would your homeschool look like, or how would your kids experience your family life if you didn't have that doubt? You can either use this as a journal prompt or we can have a discussion. You decide.
Well, for me, I know when I don't have confidence in my actions or my choices, my kids definitely reflect that.
Mm.
And it will completely change whatever it is we're, experiencing.
Mm.
So it influences the actual outcome.
Mhm.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, that's a quantum physics discussion, but I'm dying to talk about quantum physics everywhere I go. I think there's a lot of truth to that. They sense our energy.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true.
I don't
And I
think
think
I,
doubt. Oh, go ahead, Angel.
no, you can go ahead. You can go
Oh, well,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, when I doubt, it's like all of my other decisions sort of start to unravel. And so, like what you were saying too, Ray, the kids, they definitely can sense that energy and that vibe. But then I doubt, and then I just spiral in all ways. And then I start to say, things like, oh, we're behind, or oh, no, we can't go out because we need to do XYZ. And then I think then that could also make them doubt why we're homeschooling as well. Because, oh, well, we thought we were home educating so that we'd have more freedom to be going out and things like that. So I
Yeah,
think that can happen, and that wouldn't happen if there wasn't any doubt.
interesting. Yeah. Have you considered what the goal is to make sure you do the thing inside of you? What's the intention behind, I have to do this thing, we have to finish it?
Right. Well, I've started to um not pay as much attention to, like, I guess, our curriculum checklist. That helps. And
Yeah.
just enjoy, because we do like a literature based curriculum, and so just enjoying the reading, and not that we have to read two chapters a day. Maybe we only read one chapter. And that took me kind of the first year, I think, to realize that.
Yeah.
And then this year has been such a busy and crazy year that I've kind of had to realize it and just kind
Yeah.
of let go of the reins a little bit more, and realize, like, we're doing this literature based curriculum so that we can take our time on these books and have good
Yeah.
discussions and learn together. But it really, yeah, is, I think, just a lot of letting go and just sort of like, what did I hear? I learned recently about like looping subjects,
Yeah.
where you're not like trying to get certain things done every day. You just like have a
Mhm.
book, and then you're reading a chapter, and then you're
Yeah.
doing another book. So I think that kind of frees it up a
Yeah,
little bit.
that's really good. Yeah, I started with Sunlight, which was amazing.
Yeah, that's what we use. Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing, except the
Hmm.
schedule is taskmaster-ish.
It
And
is very
man,
taskmaster.
oh
Yeah,
man, oh man.
absolutely.
I was
Yeah.
doing 3 read-alouds every day. And then I
It
incorporated
is a lot of reading.
the book that's holding up my computer, Well-Trained Mind.
Right, right.
It's an amazing book. I just want to add that because I've said
That's
too
good to
often that
know.
this book is like, you want ideas for homeschooling, it's in Susan Weisbauer's book, Well-Trained Mind. But if you
Uh-huh.
want to completely overwhelm yourself, try to do Susan Bauer or Weisbauer's Well-Trained Mind, and then throw in a little Sunlight and go, whoa, whoa,
Whoa.
whoa. And
Whoa,
also,
I'm never reading another book again.
I was gonna say, I still have those books and I haven't finished
Right.
all that curriculum.
Yeah, well, and it's funny. It's funny. I have people that are asking me, like, what are you reading these days? Like, what are you reading lately? And I'm like, well, I'm reading all the
Everything.
books that I'm reading to Caroline. And so they're like all of these, like kids, all these kids books, but they're great. I love them,
Yeah.
but that's all I have time to read.
Yeah. And I mean, if that's a season, that's okay too. But I remember
Yeah.
I shared this before with the other ladies, but by year 3, I was seriously done with the whole thing. Like really, I was just like,
Yeah.
like 100% overwhelmed. And you can either Oh, I shouldn't jest about that. I was going to say you're either going to have to give somebody up for adoption. Now I'm just being silly, but or you're going to have to give up a few books.
Right. Give up a few books. Yeah, that's what I've
One sounds
realized is like,
reasonable and another one not so much. So then
right.
it was time to let go of the read alouds and let go of all the unrealistic expectations.
Hmm.
And though, I mean, those are
Yeah.
amazing resources. The curriculum possibilities out there nowadays are like
Hmm.
amazing resources. But then we just have to ask, can I be present in the moment with my kids? Am I really enjoying this? Or am I just trying to make sure they are going to become Google at the end of my 12-year home education and like
Hmm.
with Google or God? Or, or is that the intention of education? Or is there another intention for my home education? And that's something that we went into deeper earlier this morning
Hmm.
about what's your vision for your homeschool? What are the values that undergird your homeschool? And what do you believe in education to be anyway? You get to decide because you're a homeschool family, but I'll tell you something. This puts it into perspective for me. I have this one friend who is from Russia and she has been living here for a couple decades. She home educates, and that's wildly countercultural for her. And she has a postdoctorate degree, and she's married to someone very intelligent and reads remarkable books that the rest of us assume we don't have time for or are not interested in. And I can remember her saying that she was disappointed with her child. She was worried for her child not getting enough of an education and just really was uncertain about this because he was reading. And then I thought she was going to say like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or something, because that was one of my kids was fascinated with that series. And it's a light book. And she said, he's just reading Aristotle again. And I was like, shut the front door. What are you talking
Oh,
about?
that's funny.
Yeah. And she gave the list of things that he does. Like he's a nationally recognized trumpet player, like this kiddo is. And he's got so many interests. And she is worried she's not giving an education that's ideal for her child. And
Meanwhile, that's gifted.
yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
right.
We're all looking at that going, what are you talking about?
Whoa. Yeah.
Whoa. And yet that's legit. Like that's actually a real story. And I bring it up because I think doubt is something that we experience as a mother. It's not because our kid really isn't succeeding or capable to learning things, or we doubt. That's what we do. We're making choices for these human beings that are really significant. They are. And then we have to own those choices and find a way to deal with the lack of confidence or change our choice.
I was gonna say that
Yeah.
I don't I've been writing it down to kind of like get the thoughts flowing. But what I was gonna say was that I didn't think that I had any seeds of doubt. Um I would call it discouragement,
Mm.
um, which then impacts my confidence and then my confidence and my motivation, which then leads to sadness and then being unmotivated. And maybe that the discouragement sows seeds of doubt.
That is
Um
so self-aware there, Angel. That's beautiful.
yeah, because I was like, I don't think I because like I guess like when it came to recognizing because we sold our house and then we moved to Pennsylvania for about 2 months and then we came here. And between that time period of us selling our house and I was like a 3 month span where I was in in contact with people here in California on the base and stuff and trying to figure out how the homeschooling worked and calling all of the schools, calling the private schools, calling everyone and finding out that even the state of California has say so within that realm, like the private realm as well. And I was like, I'm gonna have to homeschool. And so I had already like, okay, I'm gonna have to homeschool. And so I was doing a ton of research. I was like, okay, I can do this. And then my husband wasn't on board. And this is a lot of arguments and stuff. And that impacted me and made me discouraged because he wasn't on board.
Yeah.
And I had done all this research. I had figured out because there was like a homeschool conference that I wanted to go to. And on the way to the homeschool conference, he told me that I'm not in agreement with this. If this is what you're gonna want to do, you're gonna have to do it on your own.
Mm.
And I gutted, okay? Gutted. Because I'm like, these are not just my children, these are your
Yeah.
kids as well. And you know why we can't send them to school. It's either we send them to school and we do what the state wants us to do, and then we watch our kids die, literally. And yeah, and that bothered me. And after that point, my confidence in my decision was completely shattered. And through hearing everybody's stories and that question you asked, I do recognize that the way I feel now, it was all from that,
Mm.
those encounters with my husband, who's supposed to be like, he was supposed to be, you know, my partner in this. And
Mhm.
that is where I am now. And I'm like, man, I'm really like, I really was impacted by that. I still am. And
Of
like it
course.
just really, yeah, and answered a lot of questions like, okay, that thing sowed seeds of doubt. Even though I don't think that I had doubts, now I am doubting. I don't even think I'm doubting myself. It's just I'm not. Well,
Discouraging.
yeah, I've just been riddled with discourachment. You
So you're
know,
in a place where you're homeschooling without his agreement, essentially.
it started off that way.
Oh,
I mentioned earlier today that we went to marriage counseling, and that was very, very helpful because it challenged a lot of his thinking and a lot of the decisions that he was making and stuff, and helped him to see how it was harmful thinking, and it was not like it wasn't beneficial to our family. It was, what you said before, yesterday, like personal things within himself, and therefore it was causing him to say or do things that was impacting our relationship. And
yeah.
so now he is a lot on board with, helping with the homeschooling and stuff. And he has he's taken on like helping me with curriculum and stuff. So for example, he will take because he knows the math is not my thing.
Ditto.
He does so he was doing the math and then helping with me with the schedule and stuff because we were able through the marriage counseling we were able to have that hard conversation and be real like, hey, these are pain points in our relationship.
Yeah.
This is these are the things that are impacting, and both of us had that dialogue, like, hey, this is what
Mhm.
is causing our marriage to suffer and
Mhm.
in turn causing our kids to suffer. And so he came alongside me, and one of the biggest things I told him was like, you are against it because you have not done your own research. And instead of you doing your own research to understand what all goes into this, you are strongly against it and you don't even know what you're against. You haven't educated your own self onto what it is to homeschooling because he was had like those fears you talked about trying to bring school home. Like that was in his mind as well. Like to him, the kids are idle. The kids are not doing anything. I'm like, okay, well, we're not trying to replicate a school day because school day is actually not full of, you know, curriculum. It is spaced out to replicate a work day, and so yeah, that was one of the things. But
So
yeah, the discouragement.
it's not actually really a homeschool challenge then.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and that's actually what I talk a lot about in the building boundaries coaching,
Mhm. Yeah.
because the more that we get clear on who we are, that influences the relationships that we have around us. But when we have these relational challenges, they take a lot of energy from our actual homeschool environment. and
Mhm.
make it really difficult.
Definitely.
And, you know, it's tricky because he is dad of your kids and
Mhm.
you are mom of your kids. So then coming together, I've learned this, you cannot make someone think like you, even
No, you
if
can't.
you're convinced you're right. You know, that's
Mhm.
my experience. And ditto for kids, maybe even
Yeah.
more for kids.
Yeah.
But because they don't care as much as your partner does. Your partner wants a
Yeah.
relationship with you. Your kids are like, here I am. Here I have.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
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 But
And that was definitely the major thing was the, um, how he, because like you said earlier, we all see things from our own point of view and from our own experiences and stuff. And um, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you have someone who is coming alongside you, like who maybe not even maybe that they don't have the vision, but because they care about you and they have confidence in you, it empowers you to keep going. Or because of your relationship with them, the things that they say or how they come at you when you've made a decision, it can break, it can
it
break
can
you or it
deeply
can
affect you.
discourage you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. And
Hmm.
and remember when we were talking about our relationship with ourselves,
Absolutely.
when we're able, this concept I brought up, Mary, yesterday, this idea of having a relationship with yourself, when, especially when, and we all have had this experience somehow, where our parents didn't quite meet what we need or radically didn't,
Hmm.
or various things along our developmental journey. We don't have what we need. It hasn't all been met. And so we deeply look to our partner for that. And the reality is, they are just like us in incompleteness and incapable of giving all of that. And so then us being able to address our own needs and learn how to address our own needs
Hmm.
first before we go to the other person and say, please give me something, is like
Hmm.
so huge. Trying to convince someone of something, especially when they know you're passionate about it and they're not so sure about it, doesn't work in my experience
Yeah.
unless you have, you know what? Sometimes there's certain personalities that seem like they will go along with it. And I'm going to say, Mary, my experience is on the outside, an Enneagram 9 looks like somebody
Yeah.
go with the flow. But meanwhile,
Right.
still in here going, I know what I,
No,
I'm
no.
just not telling you.
Right. Exactly. I'm going to be quietly stubborn about this. That is
Yeah, yeah,
my
Yeah.
middle name.
yeah, yeah. And you wouldn't know it, I bet. I bet most
Right.
people wouldn't guess it. Yeah. And so I'm not trying to highlight you, but I have a daughter who is a 9. So then I feel like I
Hmm.
know you just by that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And on the outside, so diplomatic, but inside.
Hmm.
And so what I was saying is even the people that look like they would be agreeable still are fixed in no, you
Hmm.
have to convince me. But are you able to talk with him about it, about that moment of discouragement? Are you able to process that with him?
I will talk to him about it because I re- I was able to come to that realization
Yeah, it's beautiful the
with
way
that
you put
question
it.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not about the curriculum. It's not about can I teach my child the dot dot dot. It's like something over here. And that is what I was saying in the discussion on doubt, or really any of your big emotions. That's why it's so important to build in a self-awareness practice, because by
Mhm.
the mere act of us looking at it, like you very succinctly put that, you were able to see, no, it wasn't this, it wasn't this, it was that moment. And when we do that, it doesn't naturally
Mhm.
unravel just because you identified it,
Mhm.
but it does help you put it on paper. And I don't know about anybody that has anxiety, but if there is anyone that has anxiety, anxiety is just like a massive emotion going on in your head that needs to come out and put
Mhm.
it somewhere so you can look at it and go, you know what? I was worried that the dishes weren't done today on time before my mother-in-law came, and what would my mother-in-law think? And that turned into a full day of me ranting at this person for not putting away that thing and then this thing. And then it would have served just to stop for a moment and ask myself, what am I feeling? What's going on here? What was the thought that I had before this feeling? And to address your needs inside here, or write it down on paper and get it out of your head.
Mhm.
Also, don't clean anything. It's just going to stay like that for 20 years. Just food for thought.
Right.
Yeah, hire somebody to clean it. In the
Yeah.
retreat, would you like to add anything to that? Or any thoughts? I have a big discussion in the retreat course on loneliness, because I think the funniest thing in the world, hearing people ask about homeschool socialization, we know our kids become kinder, generally kinder, more respectful, thoughtful people, or at least I'll tell you that they will, because they're with their kids or with their siblings and they're learning how.
We actually got a compliment today at the pool.
Of course you do.
Yeah, the pool attendant, he was like, are these your kids? And we were like, yeah. He was like, they are so well behaved and respectful. He was like, typically, I have to tell these kids to go and get their parents, or you have to leave because of how, like disrespectful and how they don't listen and how they don't have like, personal responsibility um or maturity. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, it kind of took me off guard because
Yeah.
I'm like, my kids don't listen. And to see someone else from an outside perspective, they're like, these are some good kids. I'm like, which kids are you talking about? Not mine. But yeah, but we definitely did get that. Yeah.
That
Who's
is
kids?
so
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
For the number of
That's
times
great.
that I hear of the discussion
That's
on
great.
socialization, I actually think they should be asking about homeschool mom socialization.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is
that's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
so
Like, do I
That's
get
true.
socialized? No.
Right, right. That's so true. That's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, I could leave it there because everybody's like, yep, yep, yep. But I will
Yeah.
just give you a few ideas. I know that you got a lot going on. I know. And the last thing in the day you're thinking is, why don't I go out and do something just for me at the end of the day? Because mostly it's like, can I just fit in 15 minutes of Netflix before I fall asleep?
Yeah.
Or something. Just how do I find a little bit of alone time at the end of the day? But it's really, I just encourage you to consider, and I've had this conversation at some point, I think with Ray too, or Ray and Angel at the beginning, that we are not, especially as homeschool families, we're so independent and we're so unique. And the more we homeschool, the longer we homeschool, the more independent and unique we become. And so we're very different, and yet we can be very different together and learn how to create those connections, because especially y'all, see there I did again, but I'm Canadian. I don't know if I said that, but you wouldn't know. I very much see, just like every homeschool family is very unique, but you guys all have this unique scenario where you're moving, you're transitioning quickly, creating as much connection time as you can, making commitment to spending time together, even though you don't see the world the same way, even if you don't homeschool the same way, even if you have one of your kiddos is hard to get along with another kiddo. I get that, and I acknowledge that, and I know that that can be an internal challenge, that right there. But creating community for your heart and creating support for you in this journey is very necessary to be able to make it through. And really, if you're a homeschool family or not a homeschool family, and because you're even more transient than the majority of people, trying to create ways of doing that, so useful. You could do things, I'm throwing this out here just as food for thought, but you could do things like schedule a monthly event where you're just doing games night. Doesn't cost a thing. Or you could share driving if you, I think I've already heard you say that you do, that sometimes going to and from homeschool co-op or homeschool activities, picking up a kiddo and taking turns, or sometimes taking turns once a month, once every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks, sharing kids for an hour or 2 hours and just switching kids. It's profoundly useful to have an hour completely away from your kids where you are not going to a grocery store. You are not allowed to go to a grocery store
Right.
or cleaning. 5 minutes, then you're done. And just to go do something different. Or building in, finding community mentors for your kids to incorporate people that are in the community that might, if your kiddo has an interest in carpentry, then, somebody that's already a carpenter just say, hey, my child would like to spend some time with you. Whatever way you can build family connections and offset that loneliness, build in some socialization for you.
Yeah.
So they are correct that there is a socialization challenge, but they are wrong about who it is that is challenged.
Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna the next time someone says that, I'm like, I don't get it, but they do.
Good.
Right.
Thanks. And sharing crises, that's the other thing, is when something really big happens, knowing what to do. Like all of a sudden you have this huge issue with your partner and you're like, I have to go to counseling. Who's going to look after the kids? Or you're going to the hospital because you have to get some tests run or whatever. Like so important to create those connections so that you can say, hey, can you help me? But one thing that I learned about making friends, it is, again, you have to be friends with yourself first. You have to feel comfortable with yourself and to the level or degree that you feel capable of giving yourself kindness and grace and a sense of belonging inside here, is to the level that you're able to offer that for others around you. And I don't know if you've heard about Brene Brown, Mary.
I have, yes.
Familiar
Mhm.
with her? I love a lot of what she
Mhm.
says about
Yeah.
vulnerability
Mhm.
and authenticity.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
more authentic, and I've learned this myself, because if you knew me 30 years ago, I'm not the same. And I would be terrified actually to be sharing so openly. But what I've learned is that someone said to me once, I'm really nice. Why don't people like me? And I learned this in my own world. Sometimes people don't like you because you're really nice. People just don't like people. I don't know. We just don't. And frankly, we all make book cover judgments, not some of us. We all instinctively do. It's just kind of a natural instinct to be protective or to make sense of the world. We're wrong a lot of the times, but we do instinctively do it. But if we can be, the more authentic we can be, when other people get closer to us and they see the real us, they might reject us, yes, but then they also might accept us. And if they accept the real you, you got accepted as the real you. And that matters. If you are not fully authentic and someone accepts you, you know that they didn't accept the real you.
Yeah.
And so you're not even feeling accepted anyway. So you got to be the real you.
Yeah. That is a good point. I think that was a turning point in my relationship with my in-laws, is that I started to be more, transparent and real and authentic. And I was no longer the people pleasing, going along with everything
Yeah.
that was said and stuff. And I did recognize that they were not accepting of the real me. They wanted the me that I had displayed to them, because I was still trying to figure out who I am. I'm 7 years younger than my husband. He and I got married when I was 21. Um, and we had our first kid at the same time, and so like I was still trying to figure out who I was.
Yeah.
Growing up, you don't even get a choice in an identity.
Yeah.
So like once I started to come into myself, I recognized that who I was masking, because I was masking a lot, um, it didn't serve me any longer. And I do I do have an appreciation now for, meeting when I meet people to be my authentic self. And, if they reject me, it wasn't because I was like this, I wouldn't feel like lamenting because I didn't get a chance to show them who I really was. And I'm like, oh man, like I didn't even get a chance to be open with them and they rejected me. But I do feel like you have more peace if you, like you said, show them your real self and they reject that,
Hmm.
at least they accept, okay, this is how she is. I don't want that,
Right.
but it doesn't feel as bad, honestly, when you do get rejected from, showing displaying the true you, and maybe they may decide, like if they get to a point in their lives where they, oh, okay, because I have had that experience recently. It's a person who I've met and I gave them my real self and they
They didn't.
didn't. And then now that they are on a journey of self-discovery, they've backtracked and have come to me,
Huh. Interesting.
and like wanted to know more about my story and stuff. So I
Hmm.
agree.
And it's actually after a while when you're authentic more often, then people are drawn to you. Some people will reject you and you will go, oh, ouch. And
Yeah.
but then you'll have enough people that actually do affirm you and really do connect in with you. Then you're like, oh, well, the world is what it is. Apparently everybody
Yeah.
can't like me. Because
Yeah.
actually, are we actually really thinking that everybody's going to like us? And I
Yeah.
think the answer is yes.
Right.
However, it's just not true. It's just not real. Everybody just
Hmm.
doesn't like everybody.
Yeah.
They don't have to be
Yeah.
Hmm.
hostile like they've been in the last few years because I think they were always hostile. I just think that maybe
Yeah.
too many layers pulled back over the last few years. People are way too vulnerable or
Yeah.
exposed.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
Definitely. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, well, I, you can, I think at the heart of it, we do want to feel, even if someone rejects me, as long as I still feel respected, through
Hmm.
that process, that's honestly all I care about. And if, it's like, because I feel like respect is one of those things where like we can have conversations and we can agree to disagree. Like, oh, okay, I can appreciate your perspective on something, even if I don't agree with it for myself.
Yeah.
I can still respect that, hey, that's that
Hmm.
person's story or
Yeah.
the way they view things and or through their experiences. And I can still, make space for them to be who they are authentically. And that is respect versus like some people have this, oh no, you
I'm
think like
right.
that.
You're
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
Except
And
that there are people that there's a lot of
mhm,
people that think like that, and
yeah.
also teenagers.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So that is a discussion that honestly,
Yeah.
like that respect thing, that one is tricky because if you really do want the respect, then some of your teenagers, my type 9, did great at that. But but there is certain personalities that are way more challenged to maintain that. So then we have to know what we do when we feel disrespected. And
Yeah.
actually, I had this conversation with myself and the video camera in the retreat course about how we don't have a choice but to honor the fact that our kids are different. Now, I'm not saying that we don't teach them. No, that's not a kind thing to say. If you want to express your feelings or you want to express your thoughts, I'll help you say it in a way that can be heard.
Yeah.
They do need that, but we need to recognize that they are not us. And not, when they're younger, it feels like, well, yeah, we know that they're like a little bit different. No, they're their own people.
On purpose. Yeah.
They are their own people. And I think they were placed in our lives for us to learn from and for them to learn from us.
Hmm.
But they are uniquely them. And whether we try to passive aggressively control them, AKA be really nice and try to get what we want, sometimes that works. But I don't think that should be the goal. I think the goal should be relationship And we should be straight up with, this is maybe how we do things in our home, or this is what we value. And when you're 25 and you decide that you value something different, you can do what you like, but this is how we're going to engage this. And also listen to what they really are saying. Try to understand what's going on underneath their emotions, and try to listen to what the need is under there, or try to understand them at the very least. And that can be very difficult to do because they do not package their emotions in a palatable way sometimes.
Unfiltered.
Yeah.
Unfiltered.
Yeah, can I hear an amen? Whew.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
real, definitely.
Yeah, for real. Hardest stuff of family life. But many people will say this. I heard this one time on a podcast with in an interview with one mom. You can hear it, but I've got a couple hundred podcast episodes now. But there was one mom who's like, at the end of the day, I'm just scared I'm going to screw them up. And what does screw them up mean? I would ask that. That might mean different things to different people. But I do think that we are not going to make it through this parenting thing without making mistakes. And without making mistakes, we even regret that. If we were to give or have that day back, it would be lovely if we could change that. Because now we know that certain things would have been useful in that moment. And I want to address that moment, or those moments, actually, those days, because there are some days where we're going to just feel like it's not working. I feel like a failure. I know that I'm not doing this the way that I should be doing it. I wanted to say, first of all, it's okay. No, that's not a good way of saying that. I see you. Every mother has this experience. Every mother, homeschool or not. We all have those days when we get frustrated because we have explained for the 67th time how to add two numbers, or, the thing that we've talked to them about forever. We've asked them to put their dishes in the sink, or you fill in the blank, and they're not doing it again. And maybe you're perimenopausal, or you're premenstrual, or you're pregnant or postpartum, or you're challenged by a chronic health issue, or whatever it is, or just because you're human, that you are just like, I'm so done with this. And you lash out, or you go cold on them, or walk away, or you be disrespectful yourself. Or maybe there's one of those days when one of the kids keeps challenging every single thing you say, and you just don't have the wherewithal to be kind anymore. Or when you're hearing one child reporting another child for what they're doing wrong, or they didn't do the thing you said, Mom. Love that kid. Some days I do love that kid. Or when a child declares that she can no longer compute basic, whatever, reading 3-letter words or things like that. You have a moment where you have a meltdown, or you have a withdrawal, and you go into your room and you're like, nope, I'm not doing parenting right now. And a few weeks later you go, oh, how could I have done that differently? How could I have done that day differently? And I want to speak to that moment and say, that's an opportunity for you to grow. It's an opportunity for you to learn from that moment. You are just like every person on this Zoom call, and every mother in all humanity. We have all had those days. And like we spoke earlier, a smooth sailor never makes a skilled, or a smooth sea never makes a skilled sailor. You're going to be learning how to do this management of that boat or ship on that sea. And it's going to be some of those days in your repertoire. You're going to have some of those days, but you get to do something. If you've had that day often enough, you don't need to repeat it. You can, and you probably will, but you don't have to. You can decide to come up with a plan to address it. And so I'll always encourage you to go back to a mindful moment, to schedule in your phone, that I don't have. Schedule in your phone an alarm that says to breathe, or says pause, or some trigger word to remind you to stop and just check in with yourself and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? What's the thought that I've had? Just like you were identifying, Angel, before you got clear on what the thought was and what the story was behind the thoughts, and begin to understand yourself a little bit more. Some days you might literally need to take yourself away to practice a pause. You might need to, before you say one more thing to your child that's not kind or start to lose your stuff with them, you might need to just spin on your heels and walk away, just to go sit on your bed and allow yourself to just cool down, wait for those huge emotions to pass, to allow yourself to just feel what you're feeling, to kind of gain a little bit of clarity on why you're feeling what you're feeling, and then make a choice. How am I going to respond to this? Do I have to keep repeating the same pattern? You can, you have permission. It's called being human. You don't have to do anything. You can do whatever you want, but you don't have to repeat the pattern. You can come up with a plan to address it. You can take yourself to a bathroom mirror and ask yourself, like I shared at one point, how are you doing? Are you okay? And look at yourself in the mirror. As weird as it sounds, Mary, I shared this before. It was super weird. But my husband wasn't available by text and my friend wasn't available. So then I immediately went to the mirror instinctively. And instead of looking at myself with self-condemnation, as I was in my head, because I lost it on my kiddo, don't remember the story, but I know I can recreate this in my head. I lost it on my kiddo and I knew I was wrong and I felt so much shame, and that's not the right way to address it. As soon as I looked at myself, I could see not only was I angry, yes, but also sad, like, oh, that wasn't what I wanted. And also confused, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then instinctively, when I'm looking at my face, I'm looking at my face just like I'm looking at each of your faces. And I look at your face. If you were having that moment and you come to me, which I have had many times, women do that, they are looking at me and they are scared at my judgment. They're afraid that I'm going to judge them. But actually, I look at them and I go, I totally understand where you're at. So confusing, so frustrating, so overwhelming, so frustrating. And you are a very capable mom. You are capable to do this. You are loving your kids all over the place, doing so many good things to them. So let's work out a plan to deal with this. It is not self-condemning. I know it feels like it, that you should be condemning yourself, but it isn't. You get grace, you get forgiveness again, and let's figure this out. So sometimes we need to acknowledge our uncomfortable feelings to really understand why we're feeling what we're feeling and what the thoughts are behind the feelings, because there's always a story behind there. You get to begin that self-awareness journey of understanding your triggers and what your unpleasant feelings really are. And then you need to put that into practice little by little with a little gentle accountability. Maybe that means you're doing your own accountability. Maybe it's with me, maybe it's with your friend, maybe it's with your mom or whoever it is that's in your world that can really hear you. But you're going to practice a gentle accountability with that specific scenario. Maybe you're going to write it in a journal every morning. This is my goal for the day. And at the end of the day, you might actually discover, and I didn't meet it. Or there is the scenario that triggered it. Who knew that was part of the challenge, or that was the big issue I had? But gradually it will get clearer as you develop that self-awareness. And of course, there are many techniques that I could go into to address any numbers of challenges that we have. But I want to remind you that there is no manual for parenting or homeschooling. Okay, actually, there's lots of them, but there are no individual manuals for your specific children and for understanding yourself. And you were placed here on the planet to be your children's parents. And they were supposed to be part of your stories, whether that means the really hard stories or the really wonderful stories that have happened in your life, but they were meant to be here with you in those stories. So your goal is to continue to learn about yourself, listen to what's really going on, listen to what's really going on in their world, acknowledge all of the stuff, even failure and shame, and keep on keeping on, keep growing, be willing to grow. And then those days, there won't be as many of those days, and there will be bigger gaps between those days. And then you will be able to look on the other side of a Zoom screen to other women or other women in your world, and you will be able to say, girl, I have been there. And also, you can live beyond this because you can.
That's a good word. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Hard one.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you matter. Like I said this earlier in a different session too, that there's a whole discussion of a spiritual connection that I think, because I engage people from all walks of life and all different faiths, then I don't go into specifics, but I really believe in the truths of grace and surrender and acceptance and forgiveness. And discussions are there for really good reason, because we need them. And because if we want to live with other human beings, we also need to give them.
Right.
Or we can just send them all back. You decide. Some days it will feel like we want to.
Yeah.
And imagine what life would be like, or a family would be like, if we actually embraced that more. If we really embraced, okay, yeah, I'm going to mess up. Sometimes I'm going to have moments where that was not what I want to be. That's not my best self.
Right.
Up in this moment, that is not what I want. But then what do I want to do about it?
Yeah. Right.
There's a huge moment or a huge discussion on impatience in the retreat online, because it is a big one for me. I giggle when people say, you're so patient. I'm like, I don't think you've met my children, because I don't think they would agree. Also, my voice is soothing. I swear I hear that every weekend. And I'm
It
like,
is very soothing.
yeah, what the heck? My kids don't think so, and I'm not doing that. I've had a few discussions with various people about perfectionism and the feeling of not good enough. Is that a discussion point you'd like to have, or is everybody getting tired, or where are you guys at?
I think that perfectionism can show up in ways that you don't expect.
Okay, tell me
Because
where.
you can you can think that you don't have expectations of perfectionism in your kids, but sometimes that perfectionism will be directed towards us, like with ourselves. And I realized that just listening the last couple of days is that expectation of perfection that was placed on me, although I may not expect that in my children, that trauma of that comes out in different ways for myself. And so I exhibit like lack of compassion towards myself, lack of forgiveness towards myself. And so I'm hard on myself. I have lots and lots of negative self-talk. And it's because of perfectionism. And
what are you doing about that? What are you doing about that?
I just realized that that's what I have going on. Yeah.
I'm jumping. All right.
Yeah. Just realized that through just all of this. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's what this is the
Mm.
lack of compassion towards myself, being hard on myself, and being, all the negative things, and it all stems from perfection, expecting perfection for myself, and then when I don't meet whoever's standards, my own standards, the world standards, somebody who doesn't even matter standards,
Mhm.
I'm punishing myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until now. I'm like, whoa, okay.
Wow. Yeah. That, and you said compassion, not coincidentally, when I was talking about self-compassion, that was huge for me to hear for the first time, that idea of having a relationship with myself. And I'd mentioned earlier, Mary, that the idea of having a relationship with myself sounds super kooky. And coming from where I've come from, I thought that was pretty odd. Like, I'm accustomed to the idea of having a relationship with God, having a relationship with each of the people in front of me, including my kids, my partner, my all the significant people in my world, but not with myself. But actually,
Hmm.
I think it was, I'm going to misquote Shakespeare, but he said something like, all the world's a stage and you are the only one on it. Can anybody clarify my quote there?
I think that's about right.
Something.
The
And
world's
he's,
a stage, and we're only players or
yeah,
something.
that's right. And he was so, I mean, that the quote is just like so spot on. He was so smart. I so didn't appreciate Shakespeare in high school. And then later on realized, whoa, man, that guy can write. And digs deep into really hard themes of life and has some incredible wisdom in certain things. And
Hmm.
that was one of them, is that we assume that we are the main player on the stage of our life, because we
Hmm.
definitely act like we are. We aren't the only player in our lives, but because we are forever projecting what we're experiencing here, we project it here.
Hmm.
So when we see our child disrespect us, I don't know what your experiences are on this, but for me, when I see that, I've always struggled with, he is disrespecting me, therefore I'm not worthy. Actually,
Hmm.
he's disrespecting me because he is unaware of how he's coming across. And that's what teenagers do sometimes, some of them. And some of them also just have certain personalities where they just say what they think, don't really care about what other people are thinking, not because they're cold and mean, but they're just unaware. Whereas some of
Hmm.
us people are also very empathic, and I know some of you say that's your experience
Hmm.
too, that you're very aware of what other people are experiencing, and so then you wouldn't dare say certain things because you would know it would hurt someone's feelings. And then some people just
Hmm.
aren't, and so his disrespect
Hmm.
doesn't automatically translate to, I'm not
Hmm.
worthy. But my
Hmm.
own narrative, my own stories that had nothing to do with my kids, that predated my children, I've brought into my family life. And then I'm
Hmm.
projecting it onto behavior of each of my family
Hmm.
members and
Hmm.
assuming that they're speaking
Right.
messages to me. I'm not good enough
Hmm.
unless my
Yeah.
house is clean. That was one I had. Thank goodness
Hmm.
it is not true anymore. And there is evidence
Right.
of that.
Hey y'all, Jesse is screaming. I need to help him
Oh, yeah,
get to
for sure.
bed. Can I just, I'll just listen. I think that I'm not putting him to bed.
I think you're going out in and out a bit. I'm not quite hearing you.
Oh wait, okay. Can you hear me now? There we go. Okay. So my 2-year-old screaming. I just need to put him to bed. But
Sure.
you guys keep going and I can listen. I'll just mute and turn the video off. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna go help
sure.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that to
No,
interrupt.
no problem. What's your experience of everything tonight, Ray? We can take it in a different direction if you want, or go deeper into what we're talking about.
I'm just doing a lot of like introspection um into these themes. Um I feel like definitely my experience with perfection was the same as Angel's, where you have to make those A's, and if not, the adults weren't feeling me. It was, how did I not ask for help or achieve it in some way?
Yeah.
And I carried that all through college for the most part. Um, and with my kids, where that kind of bubbles up again is when, I often say that I'm impatient, but it's not that I'm impatient, it's that I would rather take the task and do it myself. And that's where my perfectionism comes up, is uh, not necessarily having impatience with my child, but feeling as though I have to take control of the task for it to be up to a standard, but it's an arbitrary standard.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep, I'm with you there too. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's good. It's
Yeah.
it's yeah, and it's also like that feeling of like when you ask someone to do something and you can tell they don't want to do it,
Yeah.
or you've had that experience like if I ask them to do it, you're gonna be met with like attitudes or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you just like, you know what, forget it, I'm gonna do it myself. But then I'm doing it because I'm doing it with a lot of frustration and anger,
Yeah.
because it's like I just need help and I'm not getting the help.
Mhm.
And it's like a lot of things that can go into it, because it's like you have like, okay, it's like, okay, I can put this task down and I can be like, whatever, I asked you to do it.
Mhm.
I'm gonna leave it with you and be okay with that, or be frustrated because they're not doing it, or I mean, I feel like doing their part. Like let's be real, like your partner is not doing their
Yeah.
part and
Mhm.
partnering with you, and there's like especially in the military dynamic, like there's always like a uneven balance, like of the non-active duty spouse doing the majority of the heavy
Now we got
lifting
to
on
blow that up. How do I help you blow that one up?
Yeah.
Let's take on the military, ladies.
Well, that's something I didn't anticipate because, the military wasn't our first choice. And so I had a full career, was the breadwinner. And then
Yeah.
my husband was like, I'm going to go into the military. So I was like, okay. And then we experienced, I asked him to start picking up my daughter from daycare, for example. And his senior NCO felt like that was completely unacceptable. That's something I needed to do, because it would affect his career at some point. Well, what about my career? And then I realized, oh, yeah, that doesn't exist in the military.
Mhm.
You know, um,
Oh.
they say they have all these programs and these things to help us, but really, like, we could have whatever's left over.
Yeah.
And so, I had to come to terms with that in the home in every way. Even when you have a partner that has the best intentions of showing up for homeschool and all these things, ultimately, always in the back of our head, we know that we are the default for
Yeah,
everything.
every
And
single-
that in itself, uh, it's a pretty big burden to know that no
Yeah,
matter what, you are the
sure.
default for literally everything.
Yeah, because it's the needs of, and a lot of the times, like to be real with you, it's not even the needs of the military, it's the expectations of people that are in leadership above them.
Yeah, because the
That,
needs aren't there.
yeah,
They don't have the need.
no, they don't. And
They don't
and
have the
it's
need.
a lot
They,
of times they don't have
Yeah.
the military does not have this expectation or the need. It is the leadership in whatever unit your spouse is in who has this expectation, and that expectation impacts your household.
Yeah.
man,
And
girl, like
and
seriously.
Some sort of toxic leadership.
yeah, exactly. And then you
Ah,
can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because like our last assignment, my husband worked for the White House, and the
very
previous
cool.
president traveled a lot. Like President Trump traveled a lot, and my husband was rarely home.
Yeah.
And that left me with everything.
Wow.
And came home, he really wasn't helpful. And he had this expectation of the home to look a specific way. Mind you, I'm home with a kid who has special needs and an infant. And
Yeah.
I'm like exhausted out of my mind. And I'm like, and you want he wanted a house to look like a model home and all these things. I'm like, you get a break, you go to work, you do your task, you go to your hotel room with no kids bothering you, you get adequate sleep. I'm on the other hand, I'm having sleepless nights. I had to pump for my
Yeah.
infant because he couldn't latch on. So I
Mhm.
was not getting any sleep. I had to wake up every 4 hours to pump
Mhm.
milk for him. And I'm like, bro, what? You
So
when it
how do you actually deal with that? Like, I always want to wrap everything up in a nice little bow and everything's going to
yeah,
be happily ever after. And I know that's not real. So what do you
yeah,
actually do with that? Because it sounds like you're taking on an entire kind of like a patriarchal institution. That's just like, this is
yeah. And
Yeah.
it is absolutely that. And honestly, like it was really hard. Like it was almost the end of our relationship because our marriage, because our relationship was done for. We didn't even really have a relationship any longer because I felt like when one person has to take on everything, there's resentment that builds up, there's anger and frustration. I had resentment, he had resentment.
Mhm.
And we are still on the mend within the last year. Like we went to marriage counseling last year and we are working towards trying to repair things.
Yeah.
But honestly, getting to the point where it's like, you know what, I'm tired of sparing your feelings. Because truthfully, a lot of this trying to spare someone's feelings, all that leads back to the fear and anxiety and all the things that we have within ourselves. And we think that we are sparing their feelings, and really we're trying to spare our heartache and spare
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
response we get, we're trying to like shield the person inside from being heartbroken for
Yeah.
them either not responding well to what you have to say or maybe hearing things you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unexpected, but it honestly came down to saying, hey, this is the ultimatum, like we either get this together or we walk away from each other.
Yeah.
and and that was the way. And we are, like I said, this is almost a year into recovery of that.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult. A lot of marriages implode and explode. It's like a it's
Yeah.
like a bomb, a Hiroshima bomb.
Yeah. Because of the pressure, the expectations, all of that.
Yeah.
So do
Yeah,
they
for
have
sure.
anybody, not to put Mary on the spot because I know her husband is a chaplain, but do they have someone to oversee or to help support you in that? Or is there just like a, you go, girl?
Mhm.
Well, within the chaplaincy program, what I've found is that it's a job and they're human just like anybody. And
Of
so
course.
even though that's their supportive role,
A
that's
lot. Yeah.
you're not always
Yeah.
the person that's available is not always the person that is equipped
Yes.
for your needs.
Yes.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
but the military does offer 10 free like counseling sessions that you don't have to get a referral for anything.
Mhm.
And no matter what I have going on, I make sure I use my 10 a year.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's,
Because
yeah.
like she said, the source, because the source we had that was phenomenal. He PCS'd, and that sucked because he was phenomenal, and then the replacement wasn't good, and that was hard because I'm like, man, like that's another layer of the military is you get really good people who can help you or who are helpful, and then they leave, and because it's base specific, you can't really reach out to them because of the red tape to get guidance and stuff. You have to utilize the resources at your current base. And I feel like that impacted the progression we had in our relationship and the counseling and stuff because he was really a phenomenal chaplain, and the current
Yeah.
one not so much. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You
but
know, well, yeah.
mhm.
Wow. I so want to be able to help in this. And my husband is actually running for an independent member as an independent member of parliament. So in Canada, that means that he essentially entering politics. And there's part of me that's like, what the heck? Like, this is so big. It's so big.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's bigger than what I'm about to say. Me saying, I know how we should all have a school that will serve children. Nobody's listening. Nobody cares. And that's what
Yeah.
it feels like with these huge institutions like, the military.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
then,
They only care
then
about
what
how it
happens?
will look and how it will impact
Yeah.
the military. And so
Yeah.
they expect you to fix it, and which means be quiet about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
If it can't be fixed in a certain amount of time, then it's just fixed on paper.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you
It's
have a lot of
wonderful. So then
suffering.
how do you guys actually engage those discussions in your home and actually create possible shifts into something healthy? Because many people have asked me this, how do you, or some variation of like, how do you make him understand what he needs to understand so we can be in relationship? And my answer is, you can't.
You really can't.
You really can't. And sometimes it requires a massive earthquake for them to go, what do you want? Because
Yeah.
you have here isn't available for you no
No.
matter what. Like,
And that's what it
That's
was.
true.
Yeah, that's what it was for
yeah,
me.
Yeah.
yeah,
It was like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to be in this marriage anymore.
Yeah.
And that was the wake up for him. And he's like, to him, everything was fine. But
It was comfortable.
yeah, it was comfortable. And I made it that way because I was going along to get along because that was the guidance that we were having from his parents. I didn't have a family or parents to go to. His parents were, pastors and like on the surface, a good family. But the reality is that he grew up seeing his parents not like each other,
Yeah.
but got good at the acting part of it. And so the relationship that we had was fine to him. That was good.
Mhm.
We're still married, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we might go a month or so without really speaking to each other, but that was normal and okay for him. And I'm like, this is not okay. I don't want this. And I'm suffering here.
Mhm.
And I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I cannot do this. I'm suffering and I'm walking away. And there, about being authentic and being honest and open about it. And that was the turning point for him to see like, okay, I have to change something. And because some people don't care. Some people
Yeah.
will be
or
like, all
walk
right,
away.
bye. Yeah. Or and I told him I love you enough to want to be open with you to let you know that I want to walk away from this. Because I could honestly just say, you know what? Here's papers, sign them, I'm gone. We'll co-parent. Because honestly, there's no hard feelings. Like, I'm not that kind of person who's going to be like, make it difficult for him to be a father, blah, blah. No, we're just not going to be in, an intimate relationship any longer. We'll just be co-parenting friends, and then there are some spouses who are the ones who are causing a lot of the heartache, who just don't care and be like, all right, well, bye, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's just important to be real with yourself about who you are and what you are actually dealing with. Like, is your spouse compassionate? Do they show any compassion towards you? And I think that if I did not have a spouse who showed me an ounce of compassion, um, I wouldn't be sitting here today with you.
Yeah.
I would be probably in Florida, a single divorced person with my kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It is not an easy journey. Of all the things we talk about in our homeschools, that's the one that never gets a discussion, is the
Yeah.
marriage relationship. And our kids are the
Yeah.
audience for that. And
Absolutely.
it is the 100% hardest a relationship, or not hardest. It's the that requires the most from us. But when
Yeah.
we have two of us truly engaged genuinely, it's the most powerfully healing one too. And it
Mhm.
just absolutely sucks the life out of your homeschool if there is
It
challenge.
does.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It does.
Nobody talks about that.
That's why that we didn't do much for the first year of homeschooling, because
Right.
that was center stage.
So you've got a plan for that now?
Um, not okay. It's not that we have a plan, it is that we got into the counseling and got in an agreement with one another. Um,
In how you're
my
engaging each other.
yeah, because
Yeah.
my stipulation was I we will is year 12 is in July of being together.
Yeah.
And it was 10 years, 11 years actually of that kind of relationship. And I said, I won't do another 11 years of this.
Mhm.
We go to counseling together and also individual counseling. Um, I'm not gonna tell you what I need from you because I've been telling you for all of these years.
Yeah.
It is on you to do the self work that I'm doing, and it's on you to decide if this is worth it for you. Because I fully believe that if something's we will prioritize the things that we want to prioritize, and if this is important to you, you will put some fire behind it, and you will try to do whatever you can to make it work. And if we were the stipulation was we were going to be in agreement that that was going to be the thing that we were going to do,
Mm.
and that having that conversation and that understanding allowed me to brain dump all of it as it pertained to him. And I'm making the shift back to being able to focus on my children and the homeschooling life and the journey and those things, because I just don't believe you can really truly focus on that when you are having that kind of like turmoil in your marriage relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
Yeah,
it's
more than you know. But
yeah.
can I share, like, this is me sharing something from my own world, and we don't have the same stories. But when I was in this, not the same space, but in a similar energy of relationship,
Mhm.
I was always monitoring him.
Mhm.
And like, and I'm not saying that there's not a space or place for this, but like very cautious and like, I don't want you to hurt me because I felt hurt. I felt hurt. I felt hurt. And I didn't want that to be my relationship either, where I was just always on the defensive and watching. Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to get hurt? Are you going to meet my needs? Are you going to help me? Do you care? Do you actually care? Um, it can go even farther than
Mhm.
that defensive approach. And you, again, like I'm going to reiterate it till the cows come home. We don't have cows, but that your relationship with yourself is the
Yeah.
important thing. And meeting your needs, soothing your own needs, asking, what do I need? Where do I need to heal? What's my journey? Because he can't do it. And
Yeah, absolutely.
also, he will mess up. And
Mhm.
also, you don't want a relationship. I don't want a relationship where it is always watching to see if he messes up or makes mistakes. In the long run, you're meeting his needs and genuinely have an open heart of how do I just love on you and just feel connected with you, and how do I share a beautiful life with you, like that energy. And you may not be in the place to actually, that might not be where you're at in your journey, because
Yeah.
I do also know that sometimes people need to go, no, this is wrong, this can't be the way it is, that sometimes anger is necessary. And reactivity, almost like a hot, no way, this isn't going to be like this anymore. It's actually necessary, especially when you have never established your own sense of separateness from someone, and you can
Yeah.
see this crazy, unhealthy pattern going on and on and on. But then you move from that place of anger and defense to, okay, I want something so different than this.
Mhm.
I want to feel safe every time you're around, and I want to feel seen every time you're around, and I want you to feel seen, and I want every part of your needs and all of who you are to show up fully too. And that can transform in that way. I want that for I want that for you, especially because you shared so openly about your story this weekend. And then when I look at your mom or I hear about your story of your mom, I know, of course, you have anger toward her. And also, I look at her and I go, damn, there's this girl who obviously wasn't supported. If she is pregnant at, you said 14? And
Mhm.
pregnant at 14 and she didn't have support and she's supposed to what? Grow up right now? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have a baby and then all of a sudden you have this huge thing. Every person in our lives, you know, such big stories and hard stuff. And yet, and then you, I lost track of my, yeah, I just appreciate you sharing those stories. And there is coincidentally, a poem by Maya Angelou called Still I Rise. Have you ever heard this poem?
I remember
I'm
reading
gonna,
it. I need to go back and look at it though.
oh, I'm gonna send you the Instagram. I actually put up a reel one time of this, very not Instagram energy, but it is about still I rise. Like no matter what happens, I'm gonna rise. No matter how somebody tries to take me down, still I rise. And anyways, in Maya Angelou fashion, it's just like, whoa, just
Yeah.
completely all-encompassing energy. And she just declares it, it doesn't matter what happens in your life, you can rise. And that I know to be true because, girlfriend, that is me. That is
Yeah.
me. And if you know all my story, our story might not be the same, but it was prison
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Now it's not. And I will continue to be with you and anybody else that I've been placed into different people's worlds, and then just say, what do you want? Where do you want to go? Is it freedom? Then let's go to freedom, like long walk to freedom, different kind. We're going to walk to freedom and figure out how to make that happen because it really can happen. Girl, I could preach, hey? And my kids sometimes say, Mom, too long. Too much.
No, but that's good. And necessary
I'm back.
because it's good and necessary. And thank you for sharing that. 'Cause you really can meet people who don't even have an understanding of um like even like can't even relate to that kind of trauma, like they're like,
Yeah,
whoa.
such a privilege.
Yeah, and I'm like, girl, let's trade. Let's trade.
Let's trade. You and
Yeah.
me?
No, I mean like people who you meet
Yeah.
who don't have that.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
but I do
They
know
all have
that,
stuff. Do you know what though?
yeah,
They really do
yeah,
all have stuff. And though
yeah,
some stories have motion pictures for a reason.
yeah, yeah,
And some of them are ordinary, but
yeah,
my mom would tell random cashiers about where we're going and how we're running from my dad, or that we changed our, like she would just tell everybody everything. And I was always embarrassed, of course. But I remember these moments where I'm looking at her and kind of feeling pity for her because she didn't have a place to safely share all the stuff. And I remember looking at her and thinking, you know, Mom, the cashier might have a story where her kid didn't get into his soccer team or something. And she is as crushed and as concerned about her kid not getting on the soccer team as you. And not that it was the same story, but we all, no matter what our stories, we all feel the gamut of the human experience.
yeah. Because
And
pain is pain. It doesn't matter
well, I do
what
think there's
causes
a
it.
difference. I don't want to
Yeah,
discount the stories
yeah,
because some stories are like
yeah,
stories.
yeah. Because like the suffering, when you suffer, you
Mhm.
don't really want someone to like discount your suffering. You just want, like
Mhm.
Job, he didn't really want his friends to be asking him, "What did you do?" He just wanted them to sit there with him while he was suffering. And I think that ultimately we just want somebody to just be there with us, even if they
Mhm.
can't help, even if they can't offer us anything. You just really want to know that. someone that's there for you and with you.
Yes, to be seen and to be heard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to be witnessed. And there's a powerful impact when you're seen and witnessed. Then
Yeah.
sometimes you just kind of go, okay, I'm okay because I'm seen and heard.
Yeah.
Mary, when you weren't here, we didn't do a deep dive on homeschooling.
Oh, yeah, I heard. That's fine. Sometimes you don't need to do a deep dive on homeschooling. You just need to do a deep dive on something else, and that's just fine.
Yeah, the stuff that matters. I mean, no,
Right.
that was funny. I think homeschooling matters, but
Right.
Yeah. The
No,
school,
that's
because
great.
homeschooling is the school of life, you know?
it's
And
true.
yeah.
Hmm. And it's important to talk about that sort of thing. I think, like, even though we're home educating and family is definitely a priority for all of us, like, some of the things that I need to share, or some of the ways that I need to be more whole or closer to God, like, I don't need to share all that with my kids. Like, sure, I want to be vulnerable with them, but they don't need to
Mhm.
know everything. So it's good to, I think, have a safe space and just have a
Yeah.
time to unload stuff is really important.
Mhm.
Yeah, to be really seen.
Hmm.
You know, for the last 3 sessions, I would love to hear if you want to share an email, you know, 1 or 2 of your biggest insights. I'll make sure to send the recordings to you, Mary. Um, if you were able to create a pattern or a routine of nurturing yourself and really addressing your base needs, and if you were able to reimagine how you're homeschooling based on who the kids are right in front of you, releasing your unrealistic expectations and unrealistic expectations of everyone around you. And if you were able to plan and really begin to create an accountability structure to address your big emotions, the ones that have been tripping you up, what would your homeschooling life really look like? How would you feel? How would you really experience it? It's your homeschool homework right there. Homeschool
That's good.
homework is to really ask yourself, what would life really look like if you were fully embracing each area? And you can use that as journal prompts in your journals. Also, you know, you're welcome to look at the recordings yourselves. That is the weirdest thing in the world, is looking back at your own recording and listening to, did I just say that? I don't think I did. That doesn't make any sense. Or but it's really useful too, because then you can
Hmm.
do a deeper dive of what we've already been doing.
Mm.
And you know, consider finding a space or a time in your week where you can sit with that retreat work and do a deeper dive into all these different discussion points. There is an entire module that I haven't even touched on about you developing more of who you are and developing yourself, to decide how you want to show up in your whole life. And that, along with the other 3, that could be like one section a week. You could do a deeper dive into one of those areas. You are most welcome to connect with me if you haven't already booked this week, and we can have discussion on any of the topics and go a lot deeper into them. Is there anything that anybody would like to share before we close this evening? Last thoughts?
No, it was great. Thank you so much. And I'll definitely chime in or listen to the recording. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate it.
Okay. Absolutely. I'm going to make sure y'all get that Maya Angelou poem, Still I Rise. beautiful poem that I
Yeah, that'd be
almost
good.
never dedicate to homeschool moms because it is not about homeschooling at all. But there is one poem, but it does speak to the freedom of life and how we can overcome the challenges we have. There is a poem, a song actually by Danny Elfman. Have you heard the song Ordinary Miracle? I won't sing it for you, but I'll read the lyrics.
Hmm.
It's not that unusual when everything is beautiful. It's just an ordinary miracle today. The sky knows when it's time to snow. Don't need to teach a seed to grow. It's just another ordinary miracle today. Life is like a gift, they say, wrapped up for you every day. Open up and find a way to give some of your own. Isn't it remarkable? Like every time a raindrop falls, it's just another ordinary miracle today. The birds in winter have their fling and always make it home by spring. Another ordinary miracle today. So when you wake up every day, please don't throw your dreams away. Hold them close to your heart because we're all a part of the ordinary miracles. And I just feel like that song, if you listen to it, is like the theme song for every homeschool family. That oftentimes, in essence, how I see it is we take for granted the beauty of each of the people in our home. We take for granted the freedoms that we have as homeschoolers. We have a truly charmed life, even though we have plenty of challenges. We have a truly charmed life. So note the amazing things that are right in front of you, because it is a very big, very at times overwhelming, but a remarkable life as a family to do this homeschool life together.
That's
I
good. I like that song. I like Danny
Yeah.
Elfman. That's a good
Do you?
Danny Elfman. I do. Well, he does all the Tim Burton soundtracks, right?
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, like yeah, just his soundtracks or yeah, his music's really great. So yeah, I like
Yeah.
but I've never heard that song. That's really cool.
Oh, that is really wild. It is like one that I
Yeah.
play all the time.
Oh really?
Yeah, I
Huh.
didn't know that. Tim Burton of all the
I
music or all
think
the movies, right? Yeah.
I
That's
mean
what
Danny Elfman, there should only be one Danny Elfman, I would
probably
think.
Yeah.
But
you
anyway,
would
yeah,
think.
that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, a remarkable song to me. It just truly reminds me
Yeah, that's really
of this
cool.
homeschool life.
Hmm.
It goes by in a very, sometimes, some days, overwhelming lump. But man, every single memory y'all have. See, I keep saying that y'all.
Hmm.
It's almost like I'm addicted to it now. But
Hey,
this,
I get you. I'm from Kentucky. We say y'all all the time.
I'm from
Yeah.
British Columbia, and I'm not
And you're
Southern.
saying it. Yeah, this is very interesting, right?
It's very disarming. It's very warm and charming. Yeah, actually, when we were in the South a few years ago, someone kept calling me ma'am, and I was like, "Oh, you don't have to call me ma'am." And she just looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" Canadian. I'm
Oh,
revealing my
but I
Canadian.
do.
Yes, exactly.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing what insights or what thoughts you have as a result of our conversations together. But I want you to know that I feel truly honored by hearing your stories. Your stories matter, but your lives matter, not just to the kids around you, but to everyone in your community. And so just keep showing up on purpose and choosing the life that you've been given. Adapt or learn to grow, sign up for growth, keep going with the growth because it's all intended for your good and it will bring beautiful things.
Hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I look forward to connecting again.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah. It
Good.
was
Well, good
a
to see you,
pleasure.
Angel and Ray.
Yeah.
You too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A pleasure to chat with everybody.
you too.
Likewise, for sure.
Yeah. Sleep well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Thanks.